The snow hadn't stopped for hours. Thick flakes dusted the stone walkways outside the glass lodge, and the mountain air turned sharp and still. Inside the warmth of the remote Colorado retreat, the last of the guests were already gone. The investor summit had wrapped early. Flights were delayed or cancelled. Most of the staff had scattered, but not her. Talia Rhodes moved with quiet focus through the main lounge. A black binder pressed to her side, Bluetooth earpiece still chirping with updates. Her boots were damp, hair tied back in a low twist, and her head buzzed from too many last-minute logistics. She was almost done. Just one final signature before she could leave. She hadn't expected to see him still here. Silas Ward sat alone on the far side of the lodge near the fireplace, his tailored grey coat draped over the arm of the couch. Shirt slightly unbuttoned. No tie. One hand on a glass of untouched bourbon. His posture was casual, but his eyes, those unreadable sharp grey eyes, followed her as she crossed the room. "You always walk that fast," he said, low and dry. Talia slowed but didn't stop. "Only when I want to avoid conversation." He smirked faintly, looking back at the fire. "Guess I'm losing my touch." She should have kept walking. Silas Ward was the reason this whole retreat had happened. Billionaire founder of Ward Capital, known for hostile acquisitions and colder boardroom manners. His presence always made people nervous, and his silence even worse. But she paused. Maybe it was the exhaustion, maybe the blizzard outside, or maybe because for the first time he didn't sound like a CEO with an agenda. He sounded tired, human. "I didn't know you were still here," she said. "I own the place." He glanced at her. "Didn't feel like rushing to another city tonight." Talia shifted the binder in her hand. "I was just finishing final clearance. Then I'm out. You handled this weekend well." She blinked, surprised by the compliment. "Thank you." Silence followed. Not tense. Not warm either. Just unspoken things hanging in the room. "I've got extra glasses," he said, gesturing toward the untouched bar cart beside him. "Unless you only drink during peak networking hours." She hesitated. She never lingered after events, never blurred boundaries, never drank with clients, especially not billionaires who could make 100 people disappear with a phone call. But there was no staff here, no clients, no eyes. And for the first time since she arrived at the mountain lodge, she didn't feel invisible. She sat. He poured 2 fingers of bourbon and slid a glass her way. The clink of ice was the only sound between them for a moment. "Do you always stay behind like this?" she asked, finally sipping. "Only when I need to think about." He looked at the fire again. "Everything I thought I'd have figured out by now." That answer caught her off guard. She was expecting arrogance, bragging, maybe subtle flirtation. But this was real. "I thought men like you didn't second-guess anything," she said. "Men like me second-guess everything. We just hide it better." Talia sat back. Outside, the wind howled softly. Inside, time slowed. What started as casual conversation, retreat vendors, scheduling disasters, travel stories, melted into something softer. He asked about her family. She told him she grew up in North Carolina, raised by her aunt after her mother passed. She asked if he'd always wanted to run companies. He said he never wanted to work for anyone who treated people like numbers, so he became the one writing the checks. He was guarded, but not cold. She was polite, but curious, and when their laughter came, low and tired, it wasn't forced. "You know," he said, setting down his drink, "you're not what I expected." "What do you expect?" He looked directly at her. "Someone who'd try harder to impress me." She arched a brow. "Maybe I'm just not impressed by you." That made him chuckle, a genuine one. Then the quiet returned. It wasn't uncomfortable. It hummed between them. The kind of silence where something shifts and you can feel it in the air. His hand brushed against hers as she reached for the binder. Neither moved. Her heart beat once, hard. Then his lips found hers. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't calculated. It was like something unspoken between them finally broke free. She could have pulled away. Should have. but she didn't. His hands framed her face. Her fingers gripped his shirt. The fire crackled behind them as clothes loosened, breath quickened, and two tired people leaned into something that neither of them planned. There was no performance in it, no power play, just warmth, skin, closeness, and vulnerability that only existed in the dark when the world was locked outside by snow. The next morning, the wind had stopped. Sunlight cracked over the horizon. Talia woke before him. She dressed quietly, avoided the mirror, grabbed her binder, walked out of his suite without a word. No note, no goodbye. She rode down the elevator in silence and left the lodge while the snow was still melting on the steps, and she never looked back. Charlotte felt warmer than she remembered. The late spring heat clung to the air like a warning. And yet, as Talia stepped back into her cousin's two-bedroom apartment, all she felt was numb. She dropped her small suitcase by the door and kicked off her heels. The silence felt louder than it should. Her phone buzzed, but she didn't check it. The retreat was over. The emails had slowed. And that night with Silas Ward? That didn't follow her here. At least, she told herself it wouldn't. For 2 weeks, she buried it. Work piled up. New contracts came in. She built pitch decks, polished client briefs, and told her cousin Maya that the mountain trip had been fine. Professional, she'd said with a smile. Tiring, but worth it. And it was true, mostly, until the morning her alarm went off, and she didn't feel like herself. It started as a flutter. Then came the nausea, the odd fatigue, the cravings for food she usually avoided. At first, she blamed the altitude, or stress, or maybe a delayed cycle from the travel. But deep down, she already knew. By the 3rd week, the fear was no longer whispering. It was screaming. She stood in the bathroom holding the test with both hands, as if her grip could change the result. 2 pink lines. Clear, bold, undeniable. Pregnant. The room spun for a moment. She sat on the edge of the tub, her heart pounding in her throat. Pregnant, and there was no question whose it was. Silas Ward, the man who never asked for her number, never followed up, never even looked for her when she slipped out of his suite like she was nothing more than a line item on his weekend schedule. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She just sat there, jaw clenched, staring at her reflection in the mirror, searching for a version of herself that made sense now. This wasn't part of the plan. Maya got home from work that evening with takeout and her usual energy. But when she saw Talia sitting still on the couch with a stack of unopened mail, she stopped cold. What's wrong? Talia didn't blink. I'm pregnant. Maya dropped the bags. Wait, what? Who? I'm not talking about him, Talia said flatly. Maya stared. You're serious? Talia nodded once. Yeah. I took 3 tests. Her cousin sat slowly. Okay. What do you want to do? Talia folded her arms. Raise the baby. By yourself? Yep. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered, was it someone important? Talia looked away. It was someone I should have never let in. And that was the last time they spoke about it that week. 3 days later, Talia emailed her formal resignation to the consulting firm that booked her for the retreat. She cut ties with every contact connected to the Ward Capital event. She deleted photos from her phone. She blocked out the night from her mind as best she could. And when Maya offered to let her stay long-term, she accepted, under one condition: no press, no friends from work, no baby content on social media. I want to protect him, she said softly, cradling her stomach one evening. From the cameras, from the lies, from the silence I know his father would bring. Maya didn't argue. She just nodded and brought her lemon water every morning like clockwork. The pregnancy wasn't easy. Talia worked long hours remotely, building her own virtual events firm from scratch. She ran logistics for corporate clients by day and fought nausea by night. She kept things off the radar. No ultrasound pictures on the fridge. No baby shower. She didn't need celebration. She needed control. In the quiet moments, though, when she rubbed her growing belly or felt the flutters, that turned into kicks. She whispered things to her baby no one else heard. "You're not a mistake. You are wanted. You'll never have to beg someone to choose you." Those words weren't just for Ezra. They were for her too. The name came to her one rainy night as she watched a thunderstorm light up the skyline. Ezra, strong, gentle, unshakable. He deserved a name that didn't carry legacy or shame, something rooted in peace. When the contractions came 6 weeks earlier than expected, Maya rushed her to the hospital in a panic. And as she lay in that hospital bed, hooked to machines, surrounded by sterile light and unfamiliar voices, Talia closed her eyes and made herself a promise, no matter what, Ezra would never feel abandoned. Not like she did. Not like Silas made her feel that morning after, when she woke up to an empty suite. No note, no text, no goodbye. He hadn't even asked for her last name. That told her everything she needed to know. Ezra was born at 4:12 a.m., tiny but loud, strong despite his early arrival. The first time she held him, Talia wept quietly, pressing her lips to his forehead. He had her nose, her aunt's chin. But those eyes belonged to the man who had no idea he'd left something behind. She didn't tell the hospital who the father was. She didn't list a second parent on the certificate. She walked out 2 days later with her son and a silent vow in her chest. He will never be anyone's secret. But she would never hand him over to someone who never asked for him. Maya decorated a small corner of the second bedroom with thrifted baby gear. Talia worked from home, balancing feedings with client meetings. The days were long, the nights were longer, but she never complained. She had Ezra, and every time he looked up at her, eyes blinking slow and curious, she knew she'd made the right choice, even if it meant doing it all alone. She didn't hate Silas. She wasn't even angry anymore. She had something better than closure. She had purpose. Across the city, in a high-rise corner office, Silas Ward didn't know any of it. Not the nausea, not the birth, not the first laugh. To him, Talia was just a woman who vanished after one night. Another blur in a long line of forgettable meetings, late-night lounges, and broken sleep schedules. Until one proposal landed on his desk, and everything changed. Silas Ward didn't flinch when things fell apart. Not when clients backed out. Not when board members snapped. Not even when competitors copied his every move. He was used to problems. He solved them with silence and precision. But nothing in his career had prepared him for the photo staring back at him. It came tucked inside a pitch deck from a small Charlotte non-profit. Ward Capital was considering funding local women-led businesses. His assistant, Leora, had highlighted it as a feel-good, press-friendly opportunity. He almost skipped it. But her name stopped him cold. Talia Rhodes. He sat up. He hadn't heard that name since the retreat. Hadn't thought of her much either, or so he convinced himself. Until now. The proposal was professional. Clear goals. Measurable impact. He flipped the pages. Stats. Graphs. Sponsor quotes. Then he saw it. A panel photo. Talia. Standing center stage. Hair slightly longer. Skin glowing. Confidence radiating through the frame. And, in her arms, a baby. Silas blinked. His eyes narrowed. Dark curls. Round cheeks. Warm brown skin. Soft gaze. And those eyes, wide set. Grey. Almost silver in the light. His mouth went dry. He zoomed in on the screen. The baby was 5 or 6 months old, maybe younger. He pushed back in his chair, spine rigid. A knot formed in his chest. Not just shock, not even guilt. Recognition. His assistant's voice chimed in through the intercom. "Mr. Ward, do you want me to set up a follow-up call with Miss Rhodes for next week?" Silas stared at the monitor. At the baby. At his eyes staring right back at him. "No," he said, then cleared his throat. "Actually, yes. Set up the call, but cancel the team. I'll take this one alone." Leora hesitated. Alone? Alone. He didn't wait for the call. By that afternoon, he was booking a private flight to Charlotte. No press, no staff, no distractions. He didn't tell anyone why. He couldn't. Because for the first time in years, Silas didn't feel calculated. He felt exposed. Charlotte felt slower than he remembered. The sky hung low, and the spring air smelled like cut grass and memory. The address wasn't hard to find. It wasn't a mansion, not some luxury high-rise. It was a small duplex on a quiet street lined with cracked sidewalks and toy-strewn porches. His driver parked 2 blocks away. Silas walked the rest. Every step made him feel heavier. When he reached the porch, he checked the address again. Talia's name was on the mailbox. He knocked once. No answer. He knocked again. Then the door opened. And there she was. Talia, hair tied up, no makeup. One hand holding a burp cloth, the other clutching the edge of the door. Her eyes locked on him, sharp and unreadable. She didn't blink. He didn't speak. For a moment, the street noise fell away. Then she found her voice. "You don't get to show up now." Silas swallowed. "I saw the proposal." Her brow lifted slightly. "And I saw the photo," he added, "of you, holding the baby." Her jaw tightened. "You disappeared," she said. "And now you want to do what? Reconnect? Pretend it didn't happen? I didn't know. You didn't ask." She said it so clearly, it knocked the breath from him. He looked past her shoulder, trying to steady himself. "Is he mine?" Her expression didn't shift. She gave a single slight nod. "His name is Ezra." Silas closed his eyes for a second. Then he asked, carefully, "Can I meet him?" Talia's hand tightened on the door. "You don't get to be curious," she said. "This isn't a mystery to solve, Silas. This is my child. My life now. I'm not here to take anything," he said quickly. I want to see him. Please." The word hung in the air like a foreign language. Please. She studied him. Then, without a word, she stepped aside. The living room was small, but spotless. Sunlight filtered in through sheer curtains. A soft lullaby played from a baby monitor on the end table. There were books stacked neatly beside the couch. A baby swing sat near the window. And in the middle of it all, on a cushioned rocker, was Ezra, sleeping, peaceful, one chubby hand curled near his face, his chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Silas didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared. It was like watching himself as a child, only softer, more vulnerable. Talia walked past him and gently adjusted the blanket. She didn't offer a chair. She didn't offer comfort. She offered silence. It suited him. After a few minutes, she spoke. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want your money, or your guilt, or your PR machine spinning it into some redemption headline. I get that. I didn't want you showing up because you had to. I wanted you to stay gone." Silas's jaw flexed. "Then why am I here?" "I don't know." "Why are you?" He turned to face her fully. "I didn't know about him, but once I saw that picture, I couldn't look away." Talia folded her arms. "So now what? You want visitation? A DNA test?" "No." His voice was calm, low. "I want to understand who he is, who you've become, and what I missed." Her face twitched slightly, almost a flinch, because that was the one thing she never said out loud. "You missed everything." Ezra stirred in his sleep, making a soft sound. Silas instinctively stepped closer, then caught himself. He looked at Talia for permission. She gave a small nod. He knelt beside the rocker slowly, his fingers tightening and relaxing at his sides. Ezra's eyes fluttered open. They locked, wide, grey, knowing. Silas's breath hitched, and for a moment, the CEO with everything finally understood what it meant to have nothing, because this child had existed without him, grown without him, laughed, cried, breathed without ever knowing his father's face. Talia watched him closely. Silas whispered, "Hi." Ezra blinked, then yawned. Talia looked away, biting the inside of her cheek. The silence between them this time wasn't sharp. It was sad, wounded, honest. As Silas stood, he didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't beg. He simply looked at Talia and said, "I don't expect anything. I want to show up. Even if it's late." Talia's eyes didn't soften, but she didn't shut the door either. And that was the beginning. Not of reconciliation, not of redemption, but of presence, and maybe, just maybe, something more. The next morning, Silas was back. No appointment, no warning. He didn't ring the bell twice. Talia opened the door with Ezra on her hip, wearing a wrap robe and a skeptical look. "I brought diapers," Silas said, holding up a large pack of the exact brand she used. "And wipes. And those rice puff snack things babies seem to like." Talia stared at him. "You Googled baby snacks?" "I did. Extensively." He looked uncomfortable saying it, but he said it. She stepped aside again. Ezra squealed when he saw him, not because he recognized him. Babies don't work like that, but because babies know energy. And Silas, for the first time in a long time, wasn't radiating power. He was nervous, human. That, more than anything, made Talia let him stay. He didn't sit, didn't hover either. He watched as Talia laid Ezra on a playmat in the living room, quietly noting how she moved around him. No wasted steps, no hesitations. She was used to doing everything on her own. He didn't interrupt. She handed him a small toy. "Shake it near him." Silas obeyed. Ezra stared at him, then grinned. It did something strange to Silas's chest. "I'm not trying to win points," he said suddenly. Talia didn't look at him. "Then what are you doing?" He hesitated, trying not to fail. It became a pattern. Silas started stopping by every other day, sometimes with formula, other times with groceries, once with a brand new stroller Talia never asked for, which she returned the next morning without saying a word. "I'm not your PR project," she said, placing the receipt on the kitchen table. He didn't argue. Lesson learned. The next time, he showed up with takeout and no strings. She let him in. He wasn't smooth with Ezra. The first time he tried to feed him, the bottle leaked everywhere. Ezra wailed. Silas panicked and apologized 4 times in 5 minutes. Talia didn't laugh. She didn't rescue him either. She watched, measured. He kept trying. He cleaned up the mess himself. That mattered more than he realized. One afternoon, Silas arrived while Ezra was napping. Talia was sorting baby clothes at the dining table. "You want tea?" she asked without looking up. It was the first time she'd offered anything. "Sure." She poured, sat across from him. Neither spoke for a while. Then she said, "You were the first man I was ever that reckless with." Silas looked at her. She met his eyes. "I don't regret my son," she said, "but I regret trusting that moment with someone who disappeared before the sun came up." "I thought you wanted it that way," he said slowly. "I didn't want anything," she replied. "I just didn't expect anything." "That's different." Silas nodded. "I didn't mean to disappear. You didn't leave me a note, a number, not even a take care." "I know." The kettle clicked behind them. Talia stood and poured more hot water, her back to him. "I didn't want to be angry at you," she said, "but I was. For months. I felt like an idiot." "You're not." She turned slowly. "Then why did you treat me like one?" The question landed hard. Silas didn't have a clean answer. "I think I was scared." "Of me?" "No," he said. "Of what I felt. Of how little control I had." Talia set the kettle down and sat again. Her voice was softer. "You didn't need to control it. You just needed to care enough to follow through." Ezra's cry crackled through the baby monitor. She stood. Silas moved with her. "Can I?" She paused, then nodded once. He walked to the nursery. The light was dim. Ezra reached up the moment Silas leaned over the crib. Tiny fingers curled around his pinky. Silas lifted him gently, the baby curling into his chest without hesitation. Talia watched from the doorway. He looked down at Ezra, then back at her. "I don't want to miss anything else." She didn't respond, but she didn't shut him out either. That night, after Ezra went back to sleep, Silas lingered by the door. "Thanks for letting me come by." Talia folded a baby blanket over the arm of the couch. "You don't need to thank me. I know. I don't take it for granted." She looked at him. "You used to." Silas nodded, taking it in. She opened the door. He stepped out onto the porch, then turned. "I want to be here. For real. No performance, no expectations. Just here." Talia nodded slowly. "Then show up. Not with gifts, not with promises, with consistency." Silas's chest rose and fell once. "I can do that." She didn't smile, but she didn't close the door. And again, that was something. Have you ever chosen peace over closure? Did it make you stronger, or did it leave you with questions? Share your truth in the comments. Silas had been in boardrooms with men who would rather lie than blink. He'd faced multi-million-dollar lawsuits, brutal investor calls, and 3 near takeovers that could have destroyed everything he built. None of it rattled him the way this did. Sitting in the quiet of his penthouse, city lights low behind him, Silas scrolled through a photo of Ezra on his phone. Talia had sent it earlier, unprompted. Just Ezra, dressed in a little mustard-colored onesie, sitting upright on a blanket with a half-eaten teething toy in one hand. His eyes, Silas's eyes, were wide and alert. It was the first time Talia had shared anything without being asked. He zoomed in on the child's face, and the silence in his chest returned. Not the calm kind, the kind that echoed. He didn't understand what he felt that morning when Talia stood in the doorway, staring at him like he was a ghost from a life she didn't miss. Regret? Embarrassment? Maybe both. He'd thought about reaching out after that night. He remembered standing at the window of the lodge, hours after she left, debating whether to call in a favor to get her number. But he hadn't. He'd told himself it was for the best. Talia wasn't like the women he dated, flashy, familiar, easy to read. She was direct, clean, unimpressed. He liked that. Too much, and that scared him. So, he let it go, and she walked away pregnant. In the weeks since he first stepped into her house, Silas had learned a lot. How Ezra liked to be held, not cradled, but upright. That he giggled when you made the sound of a duck. That he hated green beans and loved avocado. That he reached for Talia's necklace whenever she held him close, as if he knew it was something sacred. And Talia herself, she was still a mystery. She let him in, but only so far. She never asked about his schedule, never reached out first, and never once hinted at wanting more than what he gave now. He respected that, even if it left him unsettled. One Thursday afternoon, he arrived early. Talia opened the door with a hand towel over her shoulder. Ezra was in a high chair, giggling as Maya, Talia's cousin, made silly faces across the room. "Oh, we're all home today," Maya said brightly. "Look who finally knows how to show up early." Talia smirked faintly. Silas offered a slight smile. Traffic was kind. He stepped inside and reached for Ezra, who squealed and bounced in place. Talia handed him a wipe. No avocado on the new blazer. He took it. She was joking, but not entirely. Noted. Maya studied him. Then, casually, she said, "You know, we didn't expect you to stick around. Not really." Silas glanced at her. "Why? You're busy, powerful. Men like you usually show up once, feel bad, write a check and leave." Talia didn't interrupt. Silas looked at Ezra. "I've done a lot of things wrong," he said. "But this won't be one of them." Ezra reached for his ear and babbled. Maya arched a brow. "We'll see." Later that evening, after Maya left for a shift and Ezra was finally asleep, Silas lingered in the kitchen while Talia cleaned bottles. "Your cousin doesn't like me. She doesn't trust easily. Do you?" Talia didn't answer immediately. She capped the last bottle and turned, leaning against the counter. "I trust what I see, not what people say." "Fair." Silas stepped closer, not too close. "Talia, I know I can't take back the night I disappeared, but I want to be part of his life, long term, whatever that takes." She studied him. "Even if I never forgive you?" "Yes, even if I never let you in beyond Ezra." He hesitated, then nodded. If that's all you're offering, I'll take it. Something passed over her face. Not softness, not affection, but something close to respect. When he left that night, she walked him to the door. Before he stepped out, she said quietly, I never wanted to raise a child alone, but I also didn't want someone next to me who wasn't fully present. I'm here now. Then keep showing up. He gave a single nod and walked into the night. Talia was folding Ezra's laundry when she caught herself smiling. It wasn't big, barely there, but it startled her. She hadn't smiled like that in months, quietly, without forcing it, without telling herself she had to keep it together for Ezra's sake. The reason? Silas. He hadn't missed a single visit in 3 weeks. No excuses, no last-minute cancellations, no gifts she didn't ask for, just presence. He showed up every time with an energy she never expected from him, patient, quiet, steady. And that made things complicated, because part of her had worked so hard to keep her walls up. And the other part? The part that had once curled into him beside that lodge fire. The part that remembered, his hands holding her waist like she was something worth handling with care. That part was starting to remember. Stop looking like that, Maya said from across the room, arms folded. You're softening. Talia blinked. What? You heard me. Maya tossed a clean bib into the basket. That man walks in here like a silent apology every day. And you've gone from rage to neutral to smiling when he burps the baby. I'm not smiling. You are smiling. Talia rolled her eyes and dropped a folded onesie into the drawer. I'm observing. You're catching feelings. I'm watching a man try not to fail as a father. Maya didn't push further, but her look said everything. Talia was changing. She hated it. Later that night, she couldn't sleep. Ezra had drifted off quickly, but Talia lay in bed with the lights off, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how different things looked now. Silas never asked for a second chance. He didn't flirt, he didn't beg, but he watched Ezra like the child hung the moon, and he looked at Talia like he remembered everything she thought he'd forgotten. His glances lingered, not inappropriately, but long enough to feel honest, long enough to stir something deep inside her. Not love, not yet, but recognition. The next day, Talia found herself doing something strange. She checked the clock, then again 15 minutes later. Silas wasn't late. She knew that. He was never late. Still, she waited. She wasn't used to waiting for men. She hated that she noticed. When the doorbell rang right on time, she exhaled, like she hadn't been holding her breath. He was dressed in dark jeans and a navy polo shirt. No watch, no cufflinks, casual. He held up a soft stuffed elephant. I come bearing gifts. Ezra might actually want. Talia raised an eyebrow. Is it loud? No. Does it light up? No. She nodded. You're learning. While Ezra napped later, they sat outside on the small front porch, sipping iced tea and listening to birds chirp in the trees overhead. Can I ask you something? Silas said, glancing over. Talia sipped slowly. Sure. What did you think of me after that night? She didn't answer right away. The air between them shifted. She didn't owe him the truth, but she gave it anyway. I thought you were cold, distant, disconnected from everything real. I thought you used me for the night and couldn't wait to erase it the next morning. Silas looked down at his glass. And now? She turned toward him. Now, I don't know what to think. You're not who I thought you were, but I'm not ready to rewrite the story either. He nodded slowly. That's fair. Talia stared at him. What did you think of me? He met her gaze. I thought you were the only person in that entire building who didn't want anything from me, and I didn't know how to handle that. She blinked. That landed, and I didn't want to ruin it. He added quietly. So instead, I vanished, which I see now was worse. Her voice was soft. Much worse. A pause. Then, do you want to ruin it now? Silas shook his head. No. I want to keep showing up, Talia. No pressure, just presence. She didn't reply, but her hand brushed his when she reached for her glass. And this time, she didn't pull away. That evening, while folding Ezra's pajamas, she replayed their conversation. She hadn't expected Silas to be that honest, that open. She wondered what would have happened if he had said those things months ago. But then she looked at her son, smiling in his sleep, and realized maybe things happened in the only way they could. Talia opened the front door, holding her phone between her shoulder and ear, keys jingling in one hand, a baby bag in the other. "I'll be back in an hour," she said into the phone. "Yes, Maya." I triple-checked his snacks, and the wipes, and the spare onesie. She turned towards Silas, who stood stiffly in the middle of the living room, glancing between the pack and play and the bottle warmer like he was about to perform heart surgery. Talia ended the call and raised an eyebrow. "You good?" He nodded too fast. "Great." Ezra kicked happily on the playmat, chewing on his fingers and giggling at nothing. "You don't have to do this, you know," Talia said. "Maya was going to come by, but you insisted." Silas looked at her. "I want to learn." She studied him. "There's no trophy at the end of this. I'm not doing it for that." She dropped the diaper bag by the rocker. "You sure?" "Yes." A long beat. Then she grabbed her purse, kissed Ezra's cheek, and made her way to the door. "Okay, if he starts crying, check if he's hungry, wet, or tired," Silas said quickly. "You already texted me the order." Talia blinked, impressed. She opened the door but paused. "Silas." "Yeah?" "Don't overthink it. He's a baby. He just needs attention and care." He gave a short nod. "I've got him." Talia stepped out. Silas locked the door behind her and turned back toward the baby. Ezra stared at him, then sneezed. "All right, little guy," Silas muttered, rolling up his sleeves. "Let's see if your father has a clue what he's doing." The first 20 minutes were easy. Silas read him a book. Badly. Ezra didn't mind. He stacked soft blocks. Ezra knocked them over. He handed Ezra the elephant toy he'd bought. Ezra drooled on it with enthusiasm. Silas smiled. "See, this isn't so hard." Then the bottle alarm went off. He walked to the kitchen and followed the instructions Talia had posted. Heat the bottle, but not too much. Shake it. Test it on your wrist. Pat his back after. Silas returned to the living room triumphantly with the warm bottle. Ezra took one look at it, screamed, and kicked it across the playmat. Silas froze. "What?" The wailing began. Loud, sharp, immediate. Silas picked him up awkwardly, bottle in one hand, Ezra flailing in the other. Okay. Not hungry. Maybe too hot? Too cold?" He checked the diaper. Dry. "All right. What now?" Ezra screamed louder. Silas walked, bounced, rocked. Ezra didn't stop. In fact, he got louder. "Okay, buddy, you're winning this one." Silas grabbed the elephant. Shook it. No reaction. He tried the book again. Nope. By minute 27, he had sweat on his neck and Ezra's sock in his pocket for no reason. Then, something shifted. Silas sat down on the couch, leaned Ezra against his chest, and stopped trying to fix it. No toys, no bouncing, no speaking. Just stillness. Ezra's cry softened, then softened more. Eventually it turned into small hiccups, then a sniffle. Silas exhaled deeply and looked down. Ezra had fallen asleep. His tiny hand rested on Silas's chest. His face was flushed and damp, but calm. Silas didn't move, didn't blink. His heart beat slower, steadier. And in that moment, holding his son alone, he felt something he couldn't name. But it was real. Talia returned exactly 1 hour later. She slipped inside quietly. Her eyes landed on the couch, Silas sitting perfectly still, Ezra asleep on his chest, one hand gently supporting the baby's back. She froze in the doorway. Silas looked up at her. Not startled, not smug, just present. "How'd it go?" she whispered. He nodded slowly. "He won." She smiled faintly. He added, "But I figured out the trick." "Oh?" "Just stop trying to fix everything. Let him feel safe first." She said nothing. But something inside her shifted. Silas gently passed Ezra to her arms as the baby stirred. He had a moment. Silas whispered. But we figured it out. Talia looked down at her son, then at Silas. You did good. He didn't respond with words, but the pride on his face said enough. That night, Talia sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through pictures she didn't remember taking. One showed Silas rocking Ezra, another, the baby grabbing his collar, and another, her favorite, Ezra asleep, with his hand resting just over Silas's heart. She studied it for a long time. Then she set the phone down and whispered to herself, he's not just showing up, he's staying. The rain came without warning. Talia leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, watching water sheet across the porch steps. The baby monitor hummed behind her on the kitchen counter, soft white noise filling the quiet space. Ezra was asleep. The house was still, and Silas hadn't left. He stood beside her now, both of them looking out into the grey night. Neither spoke for a while. Then she said, I used to love rain like this. He glanced at her. She continued, when I was little, my mom used to say thunder meant the sky was just clearing its throat. We'd sit under a blanket and count the seconds between lightning and sound. Silas nodded. I didn't have that. Talia looked at him. He didn't look sad, just truthful. She waited. He spoke again, voice low. My parents weren't the blanket type. They weren't the anything type. My father ran Ward Capital before me. I was raised more by his assistants than him. He didn't talk to me. He briefed me. Talia leaned on the doorframe. And your mom? Socialite. Sharp. I think she loved the idea of being a wife more than the practice of it. Talia was quiet. Silas kept his eyes on the rain. I learned how to present early, smile when necessary, stay still, speak when it made things move. She looked at him gently. And feel. He laughed under his breath. Didn't get to that chapter. That silence again, soft, unrushed. Then, do you know what scared me most when I saw Ezra for the first time? Talia shook her head. That I didn't know how to be more than a name on a birth certificate. That I'd be to him what my father was to me, present but not there. She let that sit. You're not, she said. You sure? She looked at him then, fully. You showed up. You stayed. You're learning his rhythms. That's more than most. Silas's voice dropped. I still feel like I'm behind. You are, she said honestly. But you're catching up. And he nodded, like he needed to hear that said aloud. They sat on the porch bench. The rain drummed lightly on the tin awning overhead. Talia sipped from a lukewarm mug of tea she forgot to finish earlier. She offered the other mug to Silas. He took it. Want to know what scared me? She asked. He turned to her. Always. She hesitated. Then, that you'd come back now and disrupt the peace I worked so hard to build. That Ezra would get attached and you'd disappear again. Silas didn't flinch. She added, that I'd start to trust you, and regret it. He took that in slowly. And do you? Not yet, she said softly. But I'm not hoping you leave anymore. Something shifted in his expression. A quiet surrender. Neither said the words. But they didn't have to. Something was forming between them now. Not romance. Not yet. But respect. Trust. A beginning. Later, when Silas stood to leave, Talia followed him to the door. Same time Thursday? He asked. She nodded. Ezra likes routine. He opened the door, paused, then looked at her. I like this routine too. She didn't smile, but her voice was softer than before. Drive safe. He stepped out into the rain, no umbrella, no coat. Just a man willing to get soaked for a second chance. And behind him, a woman who'd finally stopped waiting for the door to close. The notification blinked 3 times before Silas finally looked at his phone. He was halfway through reading Ezra Goodnight Moon. The baby nestled comfortably in his arm, eyelids fluttering in that dreamy, half-awake way babies do when they don't want to give in. But the message from his executive assistant was urgent. Leora, we need to finalize the Asia partnership by Friday. Sponsors are asking why you've been off the grid. The press is circling. Board wants your presence on tomorrow's investor call. 9 a.m. EST. Do you want me to push? He stared at it. Ezra made a soft sound, shifting closer to his chest. Silas didn't answer. Ward Capital never slowed down. It ran on precision, silence, and a reputation that depended on his name being attached to every major move. Silas had built that culture. But now, as he sat cross-legged on Talia's living room floor with a 5-month-old tucked against his chest, he didn't feel like a man at the top of anything. He felt grounded, small, important. Talia entered from the kitchen with a glass of water in hand. She paused when she saw the flicker of his phone screen. "Back to the Empire?" she asked lightly. He locked the screen. "It can wait." She studied him. "You say that a lot lately." "Because I mean it." "Do you?" Silas exhaled. "I'm trying." She said nothing for a long moment, then nodded toward Ezra. "He'll never remember this night." "I will." That stopped her. She looked at them, father and son, in a room filled with soft, light baby toys, and a kind of peace she never thought would be associated with Silas Ward. "You should take that call tomorrow," she said finally. "Don't lose everything you've built, trying to prove something to me." "I'm not trying to prove anything." "Then don't act like you have to choose between two lives." Silas gently laid Ezra in his rocker. "He's not a second life. He's the one that matters now." Talia lowered her eyes. She didn't say it, but she heard it. The next morning, Silas was back in his office. The view from the 40th floor hadn't changed, but something inside him had. The conference room smelled like polished glass and expectation. The board members filed in, firm handshakes, sharp nods, everyone pretending like they weren't wondering where their CEO had been for the past several weeks. Silas took his seat at the head of the table. The call with Hong Kong opened promptly. As one of the sponsors introduced the new portfolio metrics, Silas caught his reflection in the black screen of his powered-down tablet. He looked tired, but not in the way he used to. He didn't miss sleep. He missed Ezra's laugh, the gurgle before he cried, the smell of the baby shampoo Talia used. Halfway through the second segment, Leora slipped him a note. "Press is asking questions. Want me to spin it?" He scribbled back, "No. Let them wonder." After the meeting, he stepped out onto the balcony. Leora followed. "Look," she said gently, "you've been different, and I'm not asking why. But people notice. Shareholders get nervous when a man like you starts caring about things that can't be measured." He glanced at her. "Are you nervous?" "No," she said. "I'm proud of you. I just don't want you to drown in two oceans at once." He didn't respond. She added, "You've built something here. Don't burn it down to feel more human." Silas leaned on the rail, eyes on the skyline. "Then maybe the version of me that built this needs to change." Later that night, he showed up at Talia's door again. He looked more tired than usual. Talia noticed immediately. "Long day?" He nodded. "Board meeting, sponsor call, investor questions, and yet you're here." He looked at her with a quiet smile. "This is the only place I want to be lately." Ezra squealed from the playmat and reached up toward him. Silas's entire posture softened. He walked over, dropped to the floor, and scooped his son into his arms. Talia watched them. She'd spent months believing Silas's presence would be fleeting, but now she realized he was holding on tighter than she was, and maybe, for once, she was the one pulling back out of habit. Silas had never invited anyone into his office who wasn't wearing a suit or signing something worth 7 figures. So when he reached for his phone that Saturday morning and typed out, "Can you stop by the office later today? Just you. No pressure." He stared at the message longer than usual before pressing send. Talia responded 5 minutes later. "Just me?" "Yeah. Okay." The office was quiet on weekends. The building's usual buzz was gone. The echo of her heels in the marble lobby felt louder than it should have. She hadn't been back here since the retreat, the one that changed her entire life. She paused outside the elevator, looked at her reflection. wiped her gloss. When the doors opened to the 40th floor, Silas was waiting. Not in a boardroom, not behind his desk. By the glass wall with 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one. You remembered how to find it. Talia gave him a look. Hard to forget the place where everything flipped. Silas chuckled once. Fair. She looked around the space. Sleek, cold, perfect. And suddenly, very unlike the version of Silas she'd come to know through baby burps and porch conversations. This is your world. It was. Talia turned to him. What's changed? You. He walked her through the open floor. Empty chairs, unplugged screens, clean whiteboards. A space built for power. Now pulsing with something quieter. At the far end of the hallway, he stopped in front of a door she hadn't seen before. He opened it. Inside was a small, sunlit room. Neutral walls, soft couch. A framed photo of Ezra from last week sitting on the windowsill. A high-end baby bouncer still in its box beside a folded changing table. Talia stepped inside slowly. What is this? Silas stood behind her, quiet. It's a space for him. And for you. If you ever wanted to stop by, if you ever needed somewhere safe in the city, Talia turned. You built this for us? I didn't know how to say I wanted you here. So I just made room. She stared at him. Not because she didn't believe it, but because no one had ever made space for her without expecting something in return. Why now? She asked. Silas met her eyes. Because I don't want the office version of me to be a stranger to the people that matter. And we matter now. You always did, he said quietly. I was just too arrogant to admit it. She walked over to the window and looked out at the skyline. The same view from years ago. Only now, it didn't feel like it was looking down on her. She turned back. You don't owe me a room, Silas. I know. I didn't ask for this. I know. Talia's voice softened. But thank you. He nodded. And for once, he didn't need to say more. Back at her apartment later that night, Talia rocked Ezra in her arms and looked. At the tiny blue onesie Silas had folded inside the desk drawer in that office. He had thought of everything. She whispered into Ezra's ear, Your father's learning how to show up, even in places that once shut people like us out. Ezra babbled in response, his fingers curling around her necklace. And for the first time in a long time, she believed there was more to this story than just survival. There was possibility. Monday morning came soft and quiet. Ezra was already babbling in his crib when Talia opened the curtains, sunlight creeping across the nursery rug. She moved on instinct, diaper, bottle, burp, soft lullabies on her phone. Her rhythm had been steady for months now, reliable, but lately, something else had crept in. Peace. Not the kind she forced herself to feel when she first found out she was pregnant. Not the numb survival that followed. This peace came from Silas showing up, not out of guilt, but out of choice. He didn't demand credit. He didn't overstep. And now, after the space he'd built in his office, she felt like he was quietly weaving her. And Ezra into his life, not forcing them to fit, but adjusting his world to hold them better. That meant something. She wasn't in love with him, not yet. But her heart no longer flinched when he spoke. And that, she knew, was the beginning of forgiveness. Silas was already up when his phone buzzed. He'd finished his run. Ezra's picture still sat beside the kitchen espresso machine, a small ritual he kept without ever telling anyone. He grabbed a towel, wiped his face and glanced at the message. Leora, we have a problem. Silas frowned. She never used those words lightly. At the office, Leora was waiting in his private conference room, tablet in hand, eyes tight. He walked in, still half in workout gear. What is it? She slid the tablet across the table. Page 6, and half a dozen blogs by noon. The headline was already loaded. Is Ward Capital's billionaire CEO hiding a love child? Below it, a blurry photo of Silas walking out of Talia's house, Ezra tucked in his arm, half covered by a blanket. Silas's jaw clenched. I told the driver to park 2 blocks away, he muttered. Didn't stop someone with a camera and a long lens. He scrolled. Commentary. Speculation. A few recycled photos of Silas at past charity events. Nothing directly connecting Ezra. No name, no ID. But it was enough. They don't have confirmation, he said. Yet, Leora replied. But someone will. And when they do, I'll handle it. You sure? I won't let them drag her name. Leora nodded. And the board? I'll call an emergency meeting. They'll fall in line. By midday, the article had spread further. Talia's phone pinged 3 times in 2 minutes. Old co-workers. One former client. A woman she hadn't spoken to since college. Is this about you? Girl. Tell me this ain't your billionaire. Are you okay? She didn't respond to any of them. Her heart raced. Her palms were damp. She turned on the TV, something she rarely did during the day. A gossip segment played on mute. Her street appeared on the screen. The house. Her porch. She turned it off immediately. Ezra stirred in his swing, unfazed. But she wasn't. When Silas arrived that evening, Talia didn't open the door right away. He stood there, hair slightly messy, dress shirt wrinkled like he'd forgotten to care. His tie was gone. His usual sharpness dulled. She opened the door slowly. He met her eyes. I'm sorry. She stepped back without a word. Inside, Ezra squealed when he saw him. Silas crouched, picked him up, and held him close. Talia leaned against the counter, arms crossed. I don't do media, she said softly. I know. They took a photo of my home, Silas. My child. I know. Do you? He turned to face her. This isn't how I wanted any of this to happen. Talia's voice cracked. I built a quiet life. I raised him in peace. And now the world wants to turn him into some headline, some scandal. I've already called legal, Silas said. I've got people working to block anything else. They don't have your name. They don't have his. We still have time, but not much. No, he agreed. Not much. Talia walked to the couch and sat, hands trembling. I don't regret you being in his life. Silas looked over, startled by the shift in her tone. But if this is what comes with you, noise, cameras, gossip, I need to know how far you're willing to go to protect him. Not as a CEO, as a father. Silas sat beside her. I'm not walking away. I'm not asking you to, she said. I'm asking if you're ready to stop living a life where privacy is optional. He was quiet. Then, finally, yes. If it means keeping both of you safe, yes. She nodded once, and even though her chest still ached from the panic of the day, she believed him. Because for the first time, she saw something in his eyes that didn't belong to Ward Capital or his carefully crafted image. She saw fear, and that fear wasn't about exposure. It was about losing them. By the next morning, it wasn't just whispers. It was headlines. Who is the woman behind Silas Ward's secret son? From event planner to baby mama, a scandal Silas can't buy his way out of Ward Capital faces pressure amid personal controversy. Talia didn't open her curtains. She didn't answer calls. Maya fielded texts with short replies. She's fine. Please respect her space. But nothing about this felt fine. Talia sat on the edge of her bed, Ezra asleep in her arms, scrolling. Through strangers' opinions about her life, her body, her baby. One headline read, "She trapped him with a baby." She turned off the screen, put the phone down, and wept quietly into Ezra's curls. Silas arrived before noon. He didn't knock. Maya let him in with a tight nod. "She's holding it together," she said. But barely. Silas stepped into the living room. The silence between him and Talia said everything. She sat still on the couch, eyes on nothing. "I'm so sorry," he said softly. She looked at him. "What now?" Silas pulled a folded press statement from his coat pocket. "I drafted this, with legal. It confirms I'm Ezra's father. It shuts down rumors about paternity, trap narratives, and protects your name. I'll read it. Alone." On record, Talia took the paper. Read it silently. He waited. When she finished, she asked, "Why take this on yourself?" "Because I started this," he said. "You protected Ezra. You built a world for him, I'm the one who walked away that night. I'm the one who left your name out of my mouth when I should have been learning how to say it with pride. Talia looked down at the floor. I've never been in the spotlight, she said. I don't know how to stand in it without being burned. I'll stand in front of you. No, she whispered. If I do this, I need to choose it. That afternoon, Talia sat at her small kitchen table, Ezra on her lap, while Maya fussed over how to help. Silas was in the living room reviewing details with his team, speaking quietly but with urgency. I don't want to hide, Talia said suddenly. Maya stopped. What? I don't want to live the rest of my life afraid of someone else's lens. Ezra deserves more than that. Maya walked over. So, what are you saying? I'm saying, if Silas is going to face this, I want to face it too. But on my terms. The next morning, Silas stood behind a row of microphones in a navy suit without a tie. No PR handler, no stage design, no curated backdrop. Just him, raw, calm, intentional. I'm Silas Ward, he began, voice steady. I am the father of a 5-month-old boy named Ezra. I was unaware of his existence until recently, but I am fully committed to his life. And to the woman who has raised him with integrity and strength. He didn't name her. He didn't need to. She is not a scandal. She is not a mistake. And no one is entitled to turn her motherhood into entertainment. She deserves privacy, respect, and peace. Then he paused. I walked away once. I won't do it again. Cameras flashed. No further comment. He turned and walked off. By noon, the internet shifted. The statement circulated. Opinion softened. Some still criticized, but many admired. And when Silas reached Talia's house that evening, he found her on the porch holding Ezra, wearing jeans, no makeup, curls pulled back. Stronger than she'd looked just days ago. You meant every word, she said. I did. She stepped aside. Inside, Maya handed off the baby and disappeared into the kitchen, giving them space. Silas sat beside her on the couch. Ezra curled up between them. You didn't have to say all that, she whispered. I did, he replied. Because I believe it. And because I want this, he looked at her, then down at Ezra, to be the center of my life. Not the corner. She didn't speak, but she leaned into him, and for the first time, she didn't feel like a woman protecting her peace. She felt like a woman ready to share it. Has someone ever tried to define your worth from the outside? Drop A if you've ever had to reclaim your own narrative. The spotlight faded faster than Talia expected. 3 days after Silas's press conference, the stories stopped leading headlines. Another celebrity scandal took over. The noise quieted. The reporters moved on. But what stayed was Silas, and the stillness that followed. That's where the real work began. Talia wiped down the kitchen counter as Silas finished giving Ezra his bath. She could hear their voices through the monitor, Silas humming a tune off-key while Ezra kicked and splashed with wild joy. Every time she caught moments like this, it tugged at something soft inside her. Not romance, not yet, but a quiet knowing. This man wasn't here out of guilt anymore. He was here because he wanted to be. And that made all the difference. You smell like bubbles and regret, Silas said as he carried a towel-wrapped Ezra into the living room. Talia laughed, genuinely. That was way too much soap. Silas grinned. I panicked. He looked slippery. She reached for her son. He's fine. Silas watched her hold Ezra close and kiss the top of his curls. That image did something to him every time. Settled him. Silenced everything else. Can I ask you something? He said after a beat. Talia glanced at him. Sure. If we ever did this for real, if there was an us in the future, what would that look like to you? She froze, then shifted Ezra gently onto her shoulder. I don't know, Silas. He nodded slowly. She added, I've spent so long planning for me and Ezra, building a world where no one could disappoint us again. I don't know what it looks like to let someone else in, but would you want to? Talia didn't rush the answer. I'd want it to be easy. Silas smiled faintly. Love isn't always easy. I don't need love, she said gently. I need peace. I need stability. I need someone who doesn't see commitment as a threat. He looked down, then met her eyes. Then, I'll keep showing you I can be that. She nodded once. That was enough for now. The next morning, Talia sat at her desk reviewing vendor contracts when her phone buzzed. Silas, you busy later? Thought we could take Ezra to the park. Her fingers hovered over the screen. A small part of her hesitated. Letting her private world expand beyond her walls was still uncomfortable. But another part, the one that had been quietly healing, it wanted to say yes. Talia, sure. 4 p.m., the one by the library. The park was quiet, shaded by tall trees that filtered the afternoon sun. Silas arrived first, already pushing a stroller back and forth on the path, looking slightly out of place in a crisp blue button-down. Talia spotted them from across the parking lot. He looked like a man who belonged. That still surprised her. She walked toward them, diaper bag slung across her shoulder. You came early, she said. He smiled. I was excited. They set up on a bench near the play area. Ezra gurgled happily, waving his arms as pigeons scattered nearby. They sat side by side, still, unhurried. Did you ever think your life would look like this? Talia asked. Silas chuckled. Not even close. Do you miss it? What? The version of your life before this. He was quiet. Then, I miss the illusion of control, but not the loneliness that came with it. She nodded, slow and understanding. I still get scared, he admitted. Of what? Messing this up, saying the wrong thing, losing your trust again. Talia looked at him. You're not perfect, Silas. I don't expect you to be. But I do expect you to be consistent. He took that in. I can be that. She turned to him. Then we'll figure the rest out. Ezra began fussing around sunset. Talia picked him up, gently bouncing as he yawned into her shoulder. I should get him home, she said. Silas stood. Let me walk you to the car. As they reached it, Talia opened the back door and began buckling Ezra into his seat. Silas stood close, not touching, just there. When she closed the door, she looked up. He wasn't rushing off, wasn't checking his phone, just standing there like this moment mattered. See you tomorrow? He asked. Yeah, she said quietly. See you tomorrow. She drove home with the windows cracked and Ezra already asleep. And for the first time since he was born, she didn't feel like she was doing this alone. Silas hadn't seen his father in over 6 years. Not since the last boardroom clash, the day Charles Ward looked across a walnut conference table and told his only son, "You're not tough enough to lead this company long-term." Silas hadn't raised his voice. He'd stood up, adjusted his tie and walked out. Then quietly bought out his father's remaining shares 2 months later. Closure, at least on paper. Emotionally, that wound had never fully closed. So when his phone buzzed with a message that morning, unknown number, we need to talk. It's important. CW. Silas felt something he hadn't in a long time. Heat in his chest. Not anger, not fear, just history, heavy and waiting. He didn't tell Talia about the message right away. He showed up at her door like he always did, on time with fresh coffee and Ezra's favorite rattle tucked in his jacket pocket. But his silence gave him away. You're quiet today, Talia said, wiping drool from Ezra's chin. Silas shrugged. She looked at him closely. What happened? He hesitated, then exhaled. My father texted me. Talia froze. Your father? He nodded once. First time in 6 years. What did he say? Just that he wants to talk. Talia set Ezra gently in his rocker. Do you want to? Silas stared out the window for a long moment. I don't know. Later that night, after Ezra had fallen asleep, and Talia sat curled in the corner of the couch reading a client brief, Silas stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing a bottle. Do you think, he said slowly, a man can become a better father if he never had one? Talia looked up. I think, she said, a man becomes a better father the moment he chooses to be different than the one who hurt him. Silas turned off the tap. I've always been afraid I had his blood, his coldness. You're not him. You don't know that. She stood and walked toward him. I do, she said softly, because I've seen how Ezra calms when you hold him, how you watch his breathing like it's gospel, how you show up, even when it's messy. Silas lowered his eyes. I don't want to give that man the chance to hurt me again. Then don't go for him, she said. Go for you. Go so you can close the door on what he left behind. The next day, Silas sat in a downtown cafe, heart steady but mind racing. He hadn't told his driver. He didn't bring security. This wasn't a business meeting. It was personal. And when Charles Ward walked through the door, every part of Silas tensed like it was 2015 again. The older man was still tall, still sharp in posture, but smaller somehow, shoulders less squared, skin slightly pale. Silas, he said. Dad. They didn't hug. They didn't shake hands. They sat. Coffee was ordered. Neither drank it. Charles cleared his throat first. I've been watching from a distance. I figured, Ezra, he's a beautiful boy. Silas didn't react. I read what you said at the press conference, Charles continued. I never thought I'd hear those words from you. Silas folded his hands. I never thought I'd mean them. A long pause. Then, I was wrong about you. Silas looked up. Charles's voice cracked slightly. I pushed you too hard, shaped you like I was building a replacement, not raising a son. Silas said nothing. I didn't know how to father, Charles admitted. I only knew how to lead, and I led you straight into my worst habits. Silas's jaw tightened. You didn't just lead me, he said. You left me. Every birthday, every award, every moment that might have mattered. Charles nodded, shame settling deep in his lined face. I came today not to fix it, he said. Just to say, I see it now. Silas stared at him, then asked quietly, why now? Charles's voice was hoarse. Because I'm sick, and because I didn't want my grandson to grow up never knowing who I was, even if all he ever learns is that I tried too late. Silas didn't answer right away. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a photo. Ezra, holding a rattle, laughing mid-chew. He slid it across the table. This is your grandson. Charles picked it up with trembling fingers. And this, Silas said, is where the past stops. You don't get a second chance with me, but you'll never say you didn't see him. Charles blinked hard. Thank you, he whispered. Silas stood and walked out. That night, he showed up at Talia's door without a word. She let him in. He picked up Ezra, held him close, and sat on the couch without explaining. Talia sat beside him, resting a hand on his knee. Silas closed his eyes, and for the first time since he was a boy, he let himself feel safe in someone else's presence. Not judged, not compared, just safe. The morning after their shared silence on the porch, Talia moved through the kitchen with guarded steps. The kettle whistled softly, steam rising in gentle curls. She poured hot water into her favorite mug, the one that said peace, not perfection, and added her tea bag with deliberate calm. Behind her, footsteps. She didn't turn around. Morning, Silas said quietly. His voice was softer lately, less clipped, no business tone. Just a man learning how to enter someone else's space without disrupting the air. Morning, she replied, stirring honey into her cup. Ezra's babbles floated in from the nursery. I was about to check on him, Talia said. I already did, Silas answered. He's awake, playing with that elephant rattle. She gave a small nod, sipping her tea as she leaned against the counter. Silas stood across from her, arms folded, watching her with a quiet expression that didn't beg for attention, just presence. I can head out after breakfast if you want the space, he said. Talia looked up. You don't have to. I don't want to make it harder. You're not, she said, though it wasn't entirely true. His presence stirred things, questions, emotions, memories she had tucked away for months. You've been helpful. Ezra likes you. His gaze lowered briefly. I like him. The silence stretched again. Not tense, but unfamiliar. She finally asked, "When do you go back to New York?" His jaw tightened faintly. "I don't have to yet. But your work. My board knows where I am," he said. "I told them it was personal." Talia arched an eyebrow. "You told your billion-dollar company you were on personal leave?" "I said I was seeing family," he said. "And I meant it." The words hit harder than she expected. Family. He hadn't asked for a DNA test, hadn't doubted, hadn't made demands. And in the weeks he'd been staying at a nearby short-term rental, not once did he overstep. It was all so different from the man she remembered. She set her mug down. "I have to prep a client's launch this morning. I can stay with Ezra." Her shoulders tensed. "I haven't left him with anyone outside my cousin." "You don't have to," he said gently. "But if you want 2 uninterrupted hours, I'm here." She searched his face for any sign of pressure. There was none, just sincerity. An hour later, she watched from the hallway as Silas sat cross-legged. On the floor, Ezra crawling toward a stack of colorful blocks. The baby reached for the green one, then shoved it in his mouth. Silas chuckled. "That's not how you build a tower, little man." Ezra squealed. Talia's heart twisted in a way she hadn't expected. This wasn't the image she carried of Silas Ward, not the detached powerhouse who once left her without a word. This version, this man, had warmth in his eyes, patience in his hands. She turned and walked to her office. And for the first time since Ezra's birth, she worked uninterrupted for 3 full hours. When she returned, the blocks were still scattered, but Ezra was asleep in his swing. Silas was on the floor beside him, head leaned back against the wall, eyes closed. Talia watched him for a long moment. She could see the change in him, not in grand gestures but in small consistencies. The early mornings, the way he washed bottles without being asked, how he remembered which pacifier Ezra liked best. He never treated fatherhood like a task or a right. He approached it like a privilege. She hated how much that moved her. Silas opened his eyes slowly. Their gazes met. She spoke quietly. "He fell asleep on you 10 minutes ago." His voice was raspy from the short nap. "Thank you." He stood carefully. "Can I make lunch?" She blinked. "You cook?" "I've been taking classes." "Online." Talia folded her arms, half smiling. "Seriously?" He shrugged. "I'm not good, but I won't poison us." She considered. "There's salmon in the fridge. If you burn it, we're ordering pizza." He gave a small grin. "Deal." Over lunch, they sat at the dining table. Ezra still slept, giving them space that felt almost domestic. Silas sliced into the salmon. "Not dry?" "Surprisingly not," Talia said. "You're safe, for now." He chuckled. The sound was light, effortless. She studied him again. Gone was the man who once wore his title like armor. This version had relaxed shoulders and a sense of self that didn't scream for control. "Can I ask something?" she said. "Always. Were you like this before?" He looked down at his plate, pausing. "No," he admitted. "I was sharp, calculated, detached. It worked in the boardroom. It didn't work in life." "What changed?" He didn't answer right away. "Then I started losing people. First my dad, then my closest friend moved out of the country. I thought staying cold would protect me from loss. But it doesn't. No, it just isolates you from everything worth having." Talia exhaled slowly. "And what do you want now?" He looked at her, direct, serious. "Time," he said. "With him, with you. I know I'm the last person who deserves it, but if you give it, I won't waste it." She didn't speak, because part of her wanted to believe him, and part of her still remembered waking up alone. That evening, they sat on the couch after dinner. Ezra giggled in Talia's lap as she made silly faces. Silas sat beside them, his hand lightly resting on the baby's foot. Talia turned to him. "He likes you." "I'm lucky," he said. She hesitated. "I don't know what this is between us. I'm not ready to figure it out yet." "I'm not asking you to," he said. "Just let me be here." She nodded once. Okay. A quiet peace settled between them. Then Ezra sneezed. Twice. They both laughed. And for the first time in months, Talia's laughter didn't feel cautious. It felt whole. Talia found herself watching Silas more than usual. It wasn't out of suspicion anymore. It was quiet observation, how he moved around Ezra, how he adjusted without being told, how his shoulders softened the moment Ezra let out a sleepy whimper. It caught her off guard more than once. This man, who once lived in tailored suits and 12-hour meetings, now stood, barefoot in her kitchen warming up bottles, humming without realizing it. Ezra had developed a habit of reaching for Silas when he entered the room. It wasn't immediate at first, but it was growing, slowly, naturally, and Talia felt a strange ache in her chest every time it happened. Not sadness, not exactly. It was closer to longing, the kind that reminded her of everything she handled alone, and what it meant now that she wasn't. "You're good with him," she said one afternoon, handing Silas a clean onesie after Ezra had an epic blowout. Silas gave a quiet laugh, lifting Ezra carefully. "I read the manual." "There's no manual." "I know. I mean, I asked my driver to bring me a few parenting books from the bookstore in Charlotte. I read them at night after he falls asleep." Talia raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" He nodded. "I didn't want to keep asking you every little thing. I want to get this right." She folded the burp cloth with more focus than necessary. "You didn't have to." "I did. You think I want Ezra growing up thinking I'm the guy who only shows up when he's already asleep, or someone tells me to?" She looked up. "That's how my dad was." Silas didn't speak right away. His fingers brushed over Ezra's curls as the baby rested against his chest. "Mine wasn't around at all. He left when I was 6. I don't even remember his voice, just his absence." Talia didn't respond. The silence wasn't heavy, but it pressed in, familiar in a way that reminded her they both had holes in their childhoods, just shaped differently. She took a step closer. "You don't talk about your family much." Silas shrugged. "Not much to talk about. My mother raised me, worked multiple jobs. I always promised myself I'd never be like him." "Then why did you disappear after that night?" He looked up. "Because I thought I was becoming him." Talia blinked. That wasn't the answer she expected. "I panicked," Silas said, voice low. "It wasn't just the night. It was what it stirred up. I felt something I hadn't in years, and I didn't know how to handle it. So I did what I swore I never would. I walked away." Talia crossed her arms. "You hurt me." "I know. Not just by leaving, by acting like I didn't matter." His jaw clenched. "I didn't know your last name, Talia. I didn't know where you lived. I had no way to reach you. You had people, resources. You find companies halfway across the world to invest in. But not me." He exhaled slowly. "I didn't look because I thought I wasn't supposed to. You left before I woke up. I figured it was a mutual mistake." It wasn't a mistake. Their eyes met. The truth of those words sat between them, raw and real. "I didn't know I was pregnant," she said, "until weeks later, and by then it felt too late to reach out, like the moment had passed." Silas sat on the edge of the couch, balancing Ezra gently. "You didn't owe me anything, but I'm glad you're letting me in now. Don't make it sound like a favor." "It's not," he said quietly. "It's a responsibility I'm grateful to have. And more than that, I'm starting to see it's not just about Ezra." Talia didn't answer. Her heart thumped in her chest, loud enough to feel. He stood, carefully laying Ezra in his crib. The baby stirred, then settled again. Silas turned to face her fully. "I think about that night more than I should." Talia swallowed. "Don't romanticize it." "I'm not. I'm saying it changed something in me, something I buried under work and noise and control. That night cracked it open." Her arms tightened around her frame. "Don't say things you don't mean." "I'm not good with feelings, Talia. You probably already figured that out. But being around you, seeing how you carry everything with grace and strength, it makes me want to try." She blinked hard. "This isn't a movie. You don't get to show up, say the right things, and undo everything. I'm not trying to undo it. I'm trying to rebuild something, if you'll let me. She looked down at the floor where a rattle had rolled under the couch. Her voice was softer when she finally spoke. It's not just about Ezra trusting you. I have to trust you too. I know, Silas said, stepping closer. I don't expect that today, or even next week, but I'll keep showing up until you believe I mean it. Talia met his gaze. Something in his eyes was different now. Not the cold, distant look from the lodge, not the silent panic from their reunion, but something steady, intentional. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. And when he left that night, she didn't close the door right away. She watched him walk to his rental car, hand brushing through his hair, pausing once to glance back. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He just stood there for a second longer, like he wasn't ready to leave. Neither was she. But some things needed time. Trust wasn't a light switch. The next morning, Talia opened her laptop to prepare for a virtual planning session. As she pulled up her schedule, a new calendar invite popped up, a children's music class downtown, created by Silas Ward. She laughed softly. It was scheduled for Saturday morning, and next to the invite was a simple message. If you're free, Ezra might enjoy it, and if not, I'll still be there. Every week. Talia didn't respond, but she didn't delete it either. Talia didn't plan on showing up to the children's music class. She told herself it was too soon, too confusing, too loaded. But when Saturday morning came and Ezra woke with that gummy smile, babbling and bouncing in his sleep sack, something shifted. She dressed him in a navy onesie with little drums on the front, packed a snack bag, and sat in the parking lot of the community center for 10 minutes before finally getting out. The class had already started when she walked in. There were bubbles in the air, little toddlers clapping off beat, and a group of tired but loving parents singing along with a guitar-playing instructor. And there was Silas, seated on the floor in jeans and a charcoal hoodie, holding out maracas to a child who wasn't his. When he saw her, his expression didn't change dramatically. No smug smile. No dramatic reaction, just a quiet breath, like he'd been holding it. Talia joined him on the rug, letting Ezra explore the space between them. The baby immediately crawled towards Silas's lap, grabbing the maracas like they were treasure. You came, Silas said quietly. I did. Thank you. They didn't speak again for the rest of the class, but Silas didn't stop smiling. The entire time, Ezra bounced in his lap, smacking a tambourine against his leg. He was gentle, patient, the same way Talia remembered from that one night, but more grounded now. After class, as parents filed out, Silas waited by the stroller, while Talia zipped up Ezra's jacket. There's a farmer's market down the street, he said. Thought maybe we could walk. Talia hesitated. Ezra might be tired. Then I'll walk slow. So they did. The market buzzed with life. Smells of fresh bread and kettle corn, kids on scooters, live bluegrass echoing under the awnings. Talia kept one hand on the stroller, the other curled in the pocket of her coat. Silas walked beside her without overstepping. He let her lead. When they stopped for warm cider, he paid before she could protest. You always do that, she said. Do what? Step in. Fix things. Take over. He looked down at the steaming cups. I guess I'm used to solving problems. I'm not a problem. I know. That's why I'm learning to ask before acting. They found a bench in the corner of the market where Ezra could watch the ducks in a nearby pond. The baby sat between them, munching on a teething biscuit, totally enthralled. I don't remember the last time I sat still like this, Silas murmured. Talia looked at him. Then maybe that's part of the problem. He nodded slowly. You're right. A quiet pause settled between them before Talia asked, Why are you really here, Silas? He didn't flinch. For Ezra, that's not the whole truth. He turned to face her. And for you, Talia didn't respond. I know I messed up, he added, not just that night, but every day after, by not trying to find you, by staying silent when I should have fought harder. You can't rewrite the past. I'm not trying to, he said, but I can write a better next page. If you let me. Talia looked at him, really looked. There was no performance in his eyes. No act. Just a man trying. "I don't want to raise Ezra confused," she said. "He deserves clarity, stability, and he'll have that," Silas said. "Even if you never let me back in your life the way I want, I'll still be there for him. Every moment." Talia exhaled. "But what if I do let you in?" Silas reached for Ezra's dropped biscuit, wiped it with a napkin, and handed it back gently. Then, without looking up, he said, "Then I'll stay, and I'll prove I was worth the second chance." The air between them buzzed with something unspoken. Talia didn't know if she believed in perfect timing, but this felt like a moment worth remembering. Later that evening, after putting Ezra down for a nap, Talia walked back into the living room to find Silas quietly cleaning the bottles without being asked. It wasn't grand. It wasn't romantic. But it felt like love could grow from that kind of effort. "Do you want to stay for dinner?" she asked softly. He looked up. "Are you sure?" "I wouldn't ask if I wasn't." He dried his hands and nodded. "Then I'd love to." That night, they sat at the small kitchen table eating leftover chili, laughing quietly over Ezra's obsession with sweet potatoes and how Silas had nearly bought him a toy drum set until a cashier talked him out of it. Talia watched him, not as the man who vanished after one night, but as the man who came back and stayed. She didn't know where it was heading. She didn't make promises. But when Silas reached across the table and gently brushed a crumb from her lip, her body didn't flinch. It leaned forward, just slightly, and he noticed. Ezra woke crying in the middle of the night. Not the usual whimper or sleepy fuss, a full-on cry that cut through the quiet like an alarm. Talia jolted upright in bed, heart pounding. She rushed into his room, scooping him from the crib, pressing his hot little cheek to hers. He wasn't sick. He wasn't wet. He was scared. And the only thing that calmed him was when Silas appeared in the doorway, still dressed from the couch, his face soft with concern. Talia didn't ask how he heard. She just handed Ezra over. The moment the baby nestled into Silas's chest, the crying slowed. Silas rocked him gently, humming low, off-key, but steady. Ezra's tiny fingers fisted the collar of his shirt. His hiccuped breaths slowed. Talia sat on the edge of the rocking chair, watching them. "You're good at that," she whispered. "I've had a lot of time to imagine it," Silas said, his voice low. They stayed like that for a long while, not speaking, not rushing. After Ezra drifted off again, Silas laid him down carefully. Talia adjusted the blanket. Then they walked out together, quiet steps in sync. Back in the living room, Talia offered him tea, more out of something to do than anything else. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, mugs in hand. The TV glowed blue in the background but remained muted. "Why did you never come looking?" she finally asked. Silas stared into his cup. "I thought you'd moved on. You didn't even try." "I was ashamed," he admitted. "And I convinced myself, maybe you were better off without me." She nodded slowly. "So you punished us both with silence." He didn't defend himself. "That night," she continued, "when I walked away, I thought you'd stop me. I should have. You didn't." Silas set the cup down. "Talia, I can't undo that night or the years that followed, but I swear, if you ever needed me again, I'd show up without hesitation. I know I lost the right to make promises, but I'm here now." Talia turned to face him. "Why now? What changed?" "My father passed," he said softly. 6 months ago." She blinked. "Oh, he never held me accountable for anything. Gave me money, connections, approval, as long as I performed. I spent so long trying to impress him, I forgot how to be human." "I'm sorry," she said, not out of habit, but because she saw the crack in him. "He wasn't cruel," Silas added, "but he taught me that control equals strength, and I lived by that. Until one night I let go, with you, and then I ran because it terrified me." Talia swallowed. "I didn't come back because I conquered that fear," he said. "I came back because I couldn't live another year wondering what kind of man my son would think I was." Silence settled again, but this time it wasn't heavy. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Whatever you're willing to give," he said. "But I'm not here for part-time fatherhood. I want to raise Ezra, with you. I want to know your moods again. I want to earn back your trust, your time, maybe even your heart." Talia didn't move, but something in her chest did. "You left me with more than a child," she said quietly. "You left me with questions I had to answer alone. Am I enough? Will I always be disposable? Can I raise him without bitterness?" Silas leaned forward. "You were never disposable, Talia. I was a coward." She held his gaze. "Do you love me?" The question hit like a stone through glass. "Yes," he said. "I always did. I just didn't know how to love right." She didn't cry. She didn't sigh. She just looked at him, breathing slowly, her guard still up, but no longer wrapped in barbed wire. "I'm not the same woman," she whispered. "I know. And I don't want the version of you that shows up when it's convenient." "You won't get him," Silas promised. "You'll get the man who sets alarms for 3 a.m. feedings, the one who buys diapers without being asked, who listens, who stays." Talia stared down at her hands. Then, without a word, she leaned back against the couch, set her tea aside and whispered, "I'm not asking for a fairy tale." Silas nodded. "Good. I'm not offering one." They didn't touch, didn't kiss, but the stillness between them was no longer cold. It was becoming a home. And somewhere down the hall their son slept, warm, safe, and no longer missing half his world. Talia didn't expect the stillness. For the first time in months, her living room was quiet, not because Ezra was asleep or because she was too tired to move, but because Silas was gone. Gone, but not distant. He had flown back to New York that morning. "A short trip," he said. 2 days max, just enough to sit through board meetings and meet a few deadlines that couldn't wait. He didn't even take a suitcase, just a duffel bag and Ezra's drawing folded into his wallet. And yet, his absence filled the entire apartment. Ezra noticed too. He reached toward the hallway more than once, calling out "Da" with soft urgency. Talia had to fight the tightness in her throat each time she picked him up and whispered that Daddy would be back soon. Daddy. It still felt foreign to say it out loud. And yet, Ezra had started using it without anyone teaching him. Silas hadn't corrected it. He hadn't claimed it either. But he wore the word quietly, like a weight and a promise wrapped in one. Talia sat on the couch, laptop open, invoices half-typed. Her mind wasn't on work. It was on last night. Silas had kissed her. No tension, no expectations, just emotion. And she had let him. She could still feel the heat of his hand against her jaw, the press of his, forehead to hers, the way he didn't say a word when their lips parted. He didn't ask for more. He didn't even lean in again. He just looked at her, like he didn't want to break the moment. But now that moment echoed in her head. Was she slipping? Forgiving too fast? Or simply listening to a part of her heart that had waited far too long to be heard? A knock on the door pulled her out of her thoughts. It was Maya, her cousin and closest friend, holding a small bag of groceries. "I figured you weren't eating again," Maya said, brushing past her. Talia exhaled, grateful. "Ezra's napping. I saw the car was gone. Mr. Tall and Intense finally left, huh?" Talia smiled faintly. "Just for a few days." Maya glanced at her sideways. "And how do you feel about that?" Talia didn't answer. Maya set the bag down and turned. "Talia, I don't know," she said quietly. "It's like, every day he's proving he's not who I thought he was, but I don't know how much of that is real, or temporary, or just guilt." "Has he tried to explain what happened that night?" "He said he panicked, that he didn't know how to handle connection, that I threw him off." Maya folded her arms. "And that makes it okay?" "No," Talia said, "but it makes sense." Maya sat down beside her. "I know you want this to work. I do too. But don't fall in love with his progress. Fall in love with his consistency." Talia looked down. That was the difference, wasn't it? Silas had changed, grown, softened. But was it sustainable? Or would he vanish again the next time his emotions scared him? "Look," Maya added, softer now, You don't owe anyone closure wrapped in a ribbon. You owe Ezra peace. And yourself truth. Later that night, as she rocked Ezra to sleep, her mind stayed circling the same truth. Silas wasn't the man she met in Colorado. But she didn't yet know who he was now. And she couldn't afford to guess. In New York, Silas sat in his hotel suite, tie loosened, whiskey untouched. He had gone through meetings all day with one thing in his mind, going back. Charlotte didn't feel like a city anymore. It felt like a home he hadn't earned yet. He scrolled through the pictures on his phone. A blurry shot of Ezra in a high chair, cheeks full of mashed banana. A video Talia had sent that morning of Ezra babbling ball and tossing it in the wrong direction, and a photo he had taken quietly the night before, Talia asleep on the couch, Ezra curled on her chest, both peaceful. Silas didn't know how he'd made it 36 years without ever needing anyone. Now, he couldn't imagine a day without that little boy's laugh, or the sound of Talia's voice calling him out when he got too quiet. He reached for his phone, typed a message, deleted it, then typed again. Silas, flight lands by noon tomorrow. Don't wait up. Just... I'll be there. And I missed him already. Both of you. He stared at the message for a long moment. Then hit send. Back in Charlotte, Talia's phone lit up. She read the text slowly, her thumb hovering. She didn't reply. But her heart did something she hadn't expected. It softened, not because she had forgiven him, but because somewhere deep inside, she wanted to. And that was the most dangerous truth of all. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, catching the edges of the white curtains in Talia's apartment. Ezra was already awake, dragging his little stuffed lion across the living room floor while humming something tuneless. He didn't ask for Silas, not yet, but every time the front door creaked, or the elevator chimed down the hall, Talia caught her breath. She wasn't sure if it was anticipation or anxiety. Silas hadn't sent another text. No good morning, no boarding now, nothing. But she knew him well enough to know he would show up. The question that haunted her wasn't if. It was, what now? She had let him in, her space, her heart, her son's life. Slowly, one by one, she let the guards down. And now, she wasn't sure what line she'd crossed, or if she could walk it back. She didn't want chaos. She wanted clarity, the kind she never had with him before. By noon, she had dressed Ezra in a navy blue romper and brushed his soft curls into something halfway neat. She even put on a light gloss and earrings, catching herself in the mirror and laughing. "For what, Talia?" she muttered. "You're not going on a date. You're waiting to see if the man who broke you deserves to build anything new with you." Still, she didn't take the earrings off. A knock came at 12:17. She opened the door before the second knock landed. Silas stood there, wearing jeans, a grey tee, and tired eyes. No smile, no overconfidence, just a quiet presence that made her chest tighten. Ezra lit up the second he saw him. "Da!" Silas bent down with a breathless smile and scooped him up, holding him tight. He didn't say anything for a few seconds, just buried his face in the toddler's shoulder. When he looked back at Talia, there was something fragile in his expression, like he wanted her to say something but didn't know what. "Hey," he finally said. "Hey," she replied. It was awkward and real. "Can I come in?" She stepped back. "Yeah." Ezra babbled on about the cartoon he had seen that morning, tugging on Silas's hand like nothing had changed. Maybe nothing had. Maybe everything had. They sat on the couch after Ezra settled with his toys. For a while, it was just the soft sound of the television and Ezra humming. Then Silas turned to her. "I wanted to come back yesterday. I hated being away." "You had work." "Yeah, but that's not why I left. I think you know that." She looked at him. "Then say why." "I needed to be sure I wasn't slipping back into old habits, that I wasn't just reacting. I wanted to know that staying with you, with Ezra, wasn't about guilt or obligation or even comfort. It had to be deeper." Talia's throat tightened. "And is it?" "Yes." He swallowed. "I'm here because I want to be. Not to fix what I broke, but to build something better. If you'll let me." She looked away, blinking fast. It's not that simple, Silas. I know. You kissed me. I did. And you didn't say anything after. He leaned forward. Because I didn't want to ruin it, or assume it meant anything you weren't ready to give. She let out a shaky breath. I don't know what I'm ready for. Some days I remember how you made me feel before, invisible. And then I look at Ezra, and I see how much he loves you. And I see you trying. I see it. Silas looked down at his hands. I wish I could erase everything I did wrong. You can't, I know. But I can start from here, with honesty, with action. She studied him. What does that look like? He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. I found a 3-bedroom condo 10 minutes from here. Fully furnished, quiet neighborhood, close to the park. The lease is in my name. I move in next week. Her eyes widened. You're staying in Charlotte? He nodded. I can fly to New York for meetings. But I'm building the rest of my life here. If you want me to... Talia's hand flew to her mouth. She didn't speak. Didn't trust herself to. Silas continued. This isn't about rushing you or forcing us into a label. It's about stability, for Ezra, for you, for whatever this might grow into. She finally found her voice. That's a big step, I know. He smiled faintly. But I've spent my life running from people who cared. I'm done running. Ezra toddled over then, holding out a block to Silas. Build, da? Silas took it, voice cracking a little. Yeah, buddy. Let's build. Talia sat back, watching them. Her heart didn't know what to do, speed up or slow down. But one thing was clear. This wasn't the same man who walked away months ago. And she wasn't the same woman willing to be walked over. Whatever came next, it would be earned, not owed, not rushed, built, brick by brick, together. If you've ever tried to protect your peace while giving someone a second chance, this story was for you. Because love isn't just about coming back. It's about showing up with consistency, truth, and effort. If Silas and Talia moved something in you today, drop A in the comments and tell us, would you rebuild with someone who once broke you, or would you start fresh? Tap that like button if you felt anything during their journey. Subscribe for more real, raw, and emotional stories every week. And share this video with someone who still believes in healing, love, and starting over. This is Mr. Charles Stories, where every story speaks to the heart. See you in the next one.